This week on the Austin Healey channel, it's prime time. Yesterday I got the primer on and it looks good, but it's not perfect. That's what the next step is for. In season 1, I had wet sanded the car and I wasn't happy with it. The wet sanding, the water would get in the way of being able to tell where the scratches are. And then as you wet sand, it creates, the dust and the water kind of created a pasty stuff that would settle into the scratches. And then when I would clean it off for paint, I'd realize there's still scratches on there. So I was very kind of frustrated with the wet sanding method. And then I was on YouTube, as we all are, and I was watching, I've been watching a lot of the series called Paint Society. And it's this auto body guy who basically shows DIYers like you and I how to paint cars. So I was watching him and he was doing a door repair, and he was talking about after you get the primer on, what's the next step? Because the primer goes on and it's a filler primer, so it goes on kind of thick and it doesn't smooth out like the paint or the clear coat does. So he was saying that not to wet sand, that that's the old way to do it. You can't see anything, which was my point. I couldn't see anything. So he was saying dry sand. He was suggesting starting with like 320 grit because it cuts faster. I'm gonna go a bit slower. I'm gonna go with start with a 400 grit and then finish with a 600. I'm hoping not to burn through, but I'm probably going to have to do what's called a seal coat, which you basically use primer and thin it more. Usually the tech sheet specifies how to use it as a sealer, but a seal coat will lay down smoother than the filler coat. So if I burn through, or even I have a few little spots, a lot of pinholes that I need to fill that I just couldn't see until I got the primer on. So I'm happy with how it looks, but there are still some things I need to adjust. So that's what I'm going to be working on today, probably tomorrow, probably the rest of the week. So I've gone through, and everywhere I could find a little pinhole, which would be a bubble in the Bondo that's got halfway sanded through, and it's created a little pit. I've gone through and filled it with this stuff. It's a filler that dries by itself. You put it on, let it dry, and then it sands really easy, and it fills all those little pits, and you end up with a smooth surface. I put it on before I've started sanding the primer. That's why it looks kind of like leopard print at the moment. So we're gonna start sanding and see how it goes. So I was sanding by hand and quickly realized that it would take forever to do and just wear me out. So what I've done, I've switched to the DA sander, which also has a 400 grit on it. And what I'm doing, I'm just sanding through the primer until so the primer has some orange peel to it. So I'm just sanding down till it's flat, till all these little dots go away. That should give me a pretty smooth, pretty even playing field just to go back and block it out. I have burned through a couple spots, but I'm planning on having to go back and prime and do a seal coat. So that's where I am, that's what I'm doing. It's dusty, dirty work. With the primer on, it gives you one last chance to look at everything, make sure it's exactly how you want it before you put paint on. And I don't know if this is showing up, I'm trying with the light, but there's some imperfections in this front here. It's going to get the apron on it, but still this is going to be above the apron, and this still looks a little rough over here. So I'm going to do some more work on here just to make sure it's as perfect as possible, but that means I am going to have to sand down below this primer to metal to add Bondo on top of it. The great thing about Austin Healeys are the curves, but that can also be problematic when you're sanding. If you're using a sanding block, it's hard to get down into this corner. You can kind of get most of it this way and then some this way, but still this very bottom you can't get to. That's why my preferred method is to use a piece of a pool noodle and wrap some sandpaper on it, and then it fits in there quite well. It's also squishy enough that it will form to the varying curve, because the curve here is much wider than it is back here. And with this you can get all the way up to about here, and then from there on you can just use, actually the side of your hand is this meaty part here. Hands will vary per individual, but it will get down in there and form into the right shape to get the rest of it. So then you can get this whole inner corner and make it nice and smooth and beautiful. As I've been sanding, there's been a lot of places where I burned through. So I dropped down from the 400 grit, which was very slow, to 320, I think. And I'm hand sanding now because I know I'm going to have to re-prime it, actually seal it. I've gone through now and I've sanded the whole car. I'm down to a smooth surface all around it. I have a few places I'm going to check tomorrow and then clean everything up and give it a seal coat. And then I hope to be done with the primer. So this is after the seal coat. It's very, very nice and smooth. I'm really happy with that. I have learned something though. See this, this plastics stuff? When it bounces around a lot, it chips the overspray off, which then blows onto your work surface, which sucks, but this is gonna sand out. I have to go over the whole thing lightly anyway, but good to find that out now instead of when I'm spraying color, because that would suck. Yeah, so I'm gonna take off all the masking and redo it with, I think paper is gonna be better. Paper will be more absorbent and hold the paint. It took me like 2 hours to do all that, so I gotta do it again. C'est la vie, as they say in France.
If you want to come along on the ride as we complete this project, click the subscribe button. If you want YouTube to tell you every time there's a new video, click the alarm bell. Thanks for watching, and your support is very much appreciated.